Egyptian President Morsi gave a speech to discuss the progress of his first year in power. It comes 3 days before his opposition's plan for massive protests on June 30th to oust him from power. Adel Mahrouri reports.
7 decisions and 9 messages came within Morsi's speech to the nation, promising a better performance next year. For 2.5 hours, the president gave an evaluation to his first year. He shared his success, like lifting a share of the minimum wages burden, and apologized for the failures.
The amount of corruption inherited from the previous regime is unimaginable. 100 billion pounds were lost annually from the people's money. We are trying to return the rights of the people. Of course, this is not an excuse at all. I apologize to everyone for the fuel problem in the street.
Many from the opposition rushed to Tahrir Square 3 days ahead of their planned June 30th protest to hear the speech. And while they were expecting that Morsi would meet some of their demands, the president refused to give in.
What I wish for from God, and I'm very keen to reach, is a true and democratic peaceful transition of power, even if it is tomorrow morning, as long as it is according to what we have achieved from democratic development and according to the Constitution. We want an opposition, and we have a lot of that now, that is faithful to its country and has a vision. Then people would elect it, so that parliament would mix with the ruler, and the ruler also came by elections.
We are here earlier to tell him to leave. He is a president that is not for all Egyptians, only his brotherhood. We don't want them. We want someone who respects us, so they will leave.
Immediate reform in the constitution, sacking the prime minister, and early presidential elections were some of the opposition demands. Many of the opposition believed that the army would support their protest against the president, but he was keen to say that he's the commander-in-chief of the army, which was mentioned 3 times. With confidence, Morsi named Egyptian citizens and judges whom he accused of corruption and hindering progress. Morsi showed compassion to the daily trouble that Egyptians go through and announced decisions that could return security to the streets and avoid corruption, hoping with that he could dodge the June 30th protests. Adel Mahrouri, CCTV, Cairo.
To South Africa now, where South African President Jacob Zuma has cancelled his trip to Mozambique over Mandela's uncertain condition. A spokesman for South African presidency announced that former President Nelson Mandela remained in a critical condition in hospital. According to the spokesman, Mark Maharaj, President Zuma was briefed by the doctors who are still doing everything they can to ensure his well-being. While wishers have been flocking to a Pretoria hospital where Mandela is hospitalized, reports say that the 94-year-old is on life support.
President Zuma has decided to cancel his trip to Maputo, Mozambique, today, the 27th of June, where he is due to attend a SADC Summit Regional Infrastructure Investment Conference. He has reiterated his gratitude on behalf of government to all South Africans and the people throughout the world who continue to support Madiba and his family.
In the city of Mthatha, near Nelson Mandela's home village of Kunu, many are still praying for a miracle because they say they don't want to lose their 94-year-old hero. But most have accepted that although his legacy will be shared with generations to come, he cannot physically live forever. Here's what some of the residents have to say.
We love you, Nelson Mandela. We cannot lose you now. Impilo yeyako. You are the father of the nation. We love you.
Nelson Mandela, you are the hero. You stood for us years back. We were not there. You cannot die. You cannot leave us now. We love you, Tata.
We love you, Tata. You are our hero, our strength. We love you very much, Tata.
Madiba, you will remain our icon now and forevermore. Amen. We salute you. Viva Madiba.
What I can tell my kids one day is that he was a very selfless leader. He gave his all for this country, and I hope that one day when they grow up, they would also be fortunate enough to give their all to the less fortunate. He has gone through a big struggle, but throughout he came out and he still was standing strong, and he assisted everyone where he could. So no one can ever fault a man's leadership. We can just be proud of what he has done for us.
He went in jail for so many years for us to get our democracy. But at the moment, he's very ill, and I think that he's still alive because of the machines. I just wish they can switch off all the machines and just let him go peacefully.
I'm really proud of what Nelson Mandela has done for us. Okay? It's time that we should allow the family the quietness and the peace to do the decisions that they need to do that's in the best for them. We can't be too selfish if the only thing that we can ask for is for God to take him in peace.
He was a leader for everybody, not a leader for only the Mandelas, you know, only his immediate family, but he was a leader for each and every one of us. Nelson Mandela was an angel.
Nelson Mandela, Nelson Mandela,
Let's now cross over to Pretoria, where CCTV's Guy Henderson is following the developments on Mandela's condition. Guy, it's good to have you with us. Do we have any further updates on Mandela's condition?
Well, yes, we do. Just half an hour or so ago, family members of Mr. Mandela walked out of the gates of the hospital you can see behind me to greet the now hundreds of well-wishers that are passing down this road in Pretoria to say their thanks. They spent a few moments collecting flowers, collecting cards, and then spent a few minutes after that giving interviews.
Well, I'm sorry, we seem to have lost Guy Henderson. Well, I'm told he's back. Guy, we lost you a little bit there, but go ahead.
Sure, I was just saying that family members about half an hour ago came out of the hospital to greet well-wishers, to have a look at flowers and cards that have been laid by many hundreds of people outside the hospital. They then gave short interviews to various members of the media in which they appeared to set a slightly different tone, perhaps, from the one we've heard from the presidency. Makaziwe Mandela, Mr. Mandela's eldest daughter, told us that the messages of support had given her father energy that he might come through this. And one of the other daughters, one of the other granddaughters, I believe, told other journalists that that Mr. Mandela was now stable. Now, it's not very clear at this stage whether that's a contradiction of the line we've had from the presidency, which is, of course, that he is critical, but certainly a slightly different tone, at least.
So, Guy, we understand that President Zuma has cancelled his visit to Mozambique. How has this move been received there?
Yes, well, this was a trip that he was due to take to the Mozambican capital, Maputo, on Friday for a regional summit of SADC leaders, which is the regional bloc in southern Africa. Now, he has seen it fit to cancel that trip, and obviously the presidency would have had to have thought very, very carefully about that because of how it would have been perceived. But clearly they've decided that even to leave the country for a few hours, even because this is only a short flight, it's barely an hour's flight. It's something that he would have only been in Maputo for a few hours, but clearly the presidency have felt that despite how it would be perceived here in South Africa, it's not appropriate for him to leave the country given how sick Mr. Mandela is. So yes, that is adding to the worry very, very obviously, and it is adding, I think, to the number of people that are turning up outside this hospital to say their thanks.
And Guy, let's talk about US President Barack Obama's visit to South Africa. Is Mandela's situation likely to overshadow that visit?
Sorry, I didn't quite hear that question.
Just asking you, Guy, about the expected visit of President Barack Obama there in South Africa, and just wondering if Mandela's situation is likely to overshadow that visit.
Well, as it stands, that trip is going ahead, and that's something that the White House have said that they would take the lead of the South African government on. The South African government, the latest we've heard from them, was at a press briefing with the foreign minister on Wednesday, when she had said that that trip would go ahead and that Mr. Mandela would be upset if he knew that it was to be cancelled on account of him. There is now currently a press briefing underway as we speak, again with the South African foreign minister. I'm sure we'll get updates from that. But yes, as it stands, it will go ahead. I mean, unless, of course, there are other developments. But it is only a few hours now until he is due to arrive. Even if he does, though, of course, it will be a very different tone from the tone that Mr. Obama is used to having. Usually a huge event of global importance, but as he arrives here in South Africa, focus will be very much fixed on this hospital focused on the health of Nelson Mandela.
Indeed, Guy. Thanks very much for this update. That's CCTV's Guy Henderson live there in Pretoria. You're watching Africa Live. Let's take our first break this hour coming up. Obama arrives in Senegal, his first stop on his Africa trip. Welcome back to Africa Live. United States President Barack Obama arrived in Senegal's capital, Dakar, Wednesday on his first extended trip to Africa since taking office. The trip will take him to South Africa and Tanzania. CCTV's Desiree Cannon gives us more details on President Obama's arrival and agenda.
President Obama arrived in Dakar yesterday evening with a delegation of 600 people, of which 100 journalists, including the First Lady, Michelle Obama, and their two daughters. The population did not come to the airport as initially planned to welcome the president. There was heavy security presence at the airport, and several main roads were sealed off. Even many hours before Obama's arrival, Senegal airspace was completely closed. On his arrival at the airport, Obama was welcomed by President Macky Sall and his government. This morning, Obama is meeting with the president of Senegal, and the meeting will be followed by a joint press conference. He will also meet with 11 regional judicial leaders at the Supreme Court around 12. They will discuss the importance of judicial power in African democracy. Then, he and the First Lady will visit the House of Slaves Museum in Gorée Island and meet with several society leaders at the Gorée Institute. In the evening, there will be an official dinner that the President of Senegal will be hosting.
Now, meanwhile, President Obama wants to emphasize on trade and investment during his Africa tour. He will also be focusing on democratic and institutional development and the next generation of African leaders. CCTV's Daniel Branches assesses whether his trip will overcome the disappointment felt during his first term in office.
As the son of a Kenyan father, expectations for President Obama's Africa agenda were set high during his 2009 trip to Ghana. But he's actually devoted less than 24 hours on the continent, and some analysts say the Obama administration has devoted a disproportionate weight of resources on the US Africa Command.
Beyond the historic significance of a son of Africa being in the White House, there has not been much substantive change. So what you have seen is an intensification of the U.S. military presence in Africa, particularly in resource-rich areas. And what you have seen is an overly intensified focus on security, a very narrow definition of security, this quest for terrorists, wherever they may lie, often at the expense of human security, of human needs and human development on the continent.
The White House says it's not going to fall behind on trade and investment, recognizing that countries like China, Brazil and Turkey have been getting in the game in Africa, in their words. But some think the Obama team has missed an opportunity to endorse trans-governmental action.
The setting of standards needs to be done by Africans themselves, not by Americans, not by Chinese, not by Europeans. And I would urge them to do so. It's one of my disappointments that the President is not, therefore, meeting with the Africa Union, with the UN Economic Commission on Africa, with the African Development Bank, and the continental bodies that manage these kinds of issues on a broader level.
Among the iconic images that the White House will be hoping that TV networks will beam back to US audiences is a visit to Robben Island, where Nelson Mandela spent 18 of his 27 years of incarceration. So beyond the personal politics of President Obama in Africa, there is a notable shift away from development based on aid towards deeper trade ties in order to compete in the new land of opportunity. Daniel Wrenches, CCTV, Washington.
Kenya has long been known for its beautiful coastline and magical safaris. However, recently, another one of Kenya's highlights is attracting visitors from around the world. It's tea. CCTV's Trevor Ombinja has more.
Tourists from the United States, South Africa and other countries around the world come to this tea plantation located in Kenya's highlands to learn the art of tea making. From growing to tasting the tea, visitors learn how to distinguish between high and low quality tea.
Oh, it's incredible. The black tea is incredible. It's probably the best tea I've had. And also the milk that she served with the tea comes from cows that are actually here on the farm. So that means that the entire experience is completely Kenyan.
The tour is very good. It's very informative. It's quite relaxed, but the lady obviously knows a lot about the tea making process since she obviously owns the farm. So I found it very informative and educational.
And after a cup of warm tea, guests go for a walk around the tea garden, enjoying the fresh air and listening to the history of the tea plantation story. And during a quick tour into the forest near the farm, visitors learn about the plants that can be used for medicinal purposes.
So if they take their...
Some leaves can be used as a mosquito repellent, and some tree bark soaked in boiled water can relieve pain, cure colds and help with sore throats. Thanks to its unique climate and soil conditions, Kenya's black tea gains its excellent flavor and wins the heart of tea lovers from across the world. Tea farming is one of Kenya's largest industries, with millions of kilograms being exported around the world every year. Trevor Ombija, CCTV.